All right, Clone High. This episode, man, it's literally the fucking plot of Superbad.
I was watching this and I'm like, there's no way that Christopher isn't going to mention Superbad. Welcome to a very special episode of the Lasercomb Podcast. Lasercomb Podcast 64.
Nintendo 64.
Ah! You may or may not be aware that, uh, yeah, we're reviewing a little show called Clone High today. And as per the norm, all things humans say, I am one of your hosts, NeoCal.
And I'm the other guy, The Siege. And this week on the Lasercomb podcast, we are continuing on with our ongoing theme of Rip in Peace Teletoon.
Rip in peace, Teletoon.
And for anyone just joining us, Teletoon was a Canadian animation centric TV channel that launched in 1997 and recently was rebranded as Cartoon Network USA for some bewildering reason. Millennials on Twitter,
Ooh,
Canadian millennials on Twitter were very angry, myself included, were very angry about the rebranding of Teletoon. For people of a certain age, Teletoon is kind of synonymous with childhood joy,
right?
right?
Yeah, I was so into the intro that I forgot to say that here on the Lasercomb podcast, we comb through classic television with a fine-tooth laser.
I did notice that, yes.
All right, do you want to redo it?
No, it's fine. We're we're
We're
we're
too
we're
far
going
in,
forward.
man.
We've come too far. I like that joke in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle where they like leave their place and they're like super stoned at this or no, I don't think they're stoned at this point, but they leave their house to like go to White Castle and one of them is like, "Oh shit, I forgot something. Should we go back for it?" And they look back at like they're just at the end of the hall in their apartment
It's
building
like 15 feet
And
away.
Kumar is like, "No, we've come too far."
We've come too far.
So since then, that's always been like a thing that I like to reference.
I do, but people don't get that very specific reference. Like
It's very specific, yeah.
I'll leave with my partner because we'll go for a walk somewhere, and I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't grab my phone. Oh, but do I really need it? Oh, but if there's an emergency, should I go back for it?" And I'll turn and I'll just stare at like the door, and I'll be like, "No, we've come too far."
uh,
And you know who's come too far?
so we've on our programming block of Rip in Peace Teletoon. Now we have covered Donkey Kong Country. We have covered Captain Star. We have covered Cyber Six, and now we're covering Clone High.
Way back in the 1980s, secret government employees dug up famous guys and ladies and made up using genetic copies. Now the clones are sexy teens. Now they're gonna make it if they try. Loving, learning, sharing, charging. Time to laugh and shiver and cry. Time to watch Clone High. Energetic and engaging. Clone High. Our angst is entertaining. Clone High. Our plans are never boring. Who am I? Clone High.
That's right.
And very early on in this, in the early days of this podcast, we covered a episode of Undergrads, which is another show that is synonymous with Teletoon.
Hmm.
Now,
And I didn't know this, but Siege has told me that Clone High is it's coming back, folks.
yes, it's been renewed for 2 new seasons on HBO Max, which has now been rebranded as just Max, as it's been merged with Discovery Plus.
Max.
It's just called
And
Max.
soon it will just be X. And then all will pay X and hail X for the shows that humans like.
Protoform X.
Protoform X. Wait until it's an AI strong enough to make new episodes for each viewer based on like what they like and like dislike in live time. Like you'll see a different episode than I'll see.
You know what? Now that you bring that up, I could totally see that becoming the dystopian future of entertainment. And I
There's no
frank,
creators for anything. It's
I
based
don't
on
want to
the
see that,
I don't fucking want to see it either. I am
but I could see that happening totally.
and I know people that are like, "Oh, can you imagine it would like take all your because it would use algorithm based like learning and know what you like and dislike and use Facebook info and all these other infos. You could watch like new episodes of The Simpsons that you would like." And I'm like, I don't want that. That's actually an argument a friend has used. And
Wow.
I'm like, but I don't want that.
I could see how people of a certain personality type would eat that up. And that's part of the reason why I could see that becoming the dystopian entertainment future, is because so many people will eat that shit up. I don't want to see that though, because I that eliminates creative voice.
Yeah.
I like when I'm watching a television show or a movie or even playing a video game or whatever, like I am experiencing a very select handful of people's artistic vision, and I
And
don't want to lose that.
I want to see other people's artistic vision and I want them to get paid.
Yeah,
I
yeah. That's
don't
why I
care
don't.
how expensive it is.
That's part of the reason why I don't pirate things, is because people should get paid.
You should get paid.
And I've heard people make the argument, and an old coworker of ours back in the Blockbuster days would make this argument regularly, um, in defense of pirating things. He's like, "Oh, well, they make enough money as it is," and it's like,
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
yeah, I figured you would. And I've heard that argument from other people too. And it's like, well, how would you feel if people said that about your day job?
And
Because you know
some
what?
people do.
And some people do. And you know what? You probably don't feel like you make enough money for what you do, right? I'm guessing they probably don't think the same. So someone just like stealing your work and being like, well, you make enough money as it is. And it's like, well, no, fuck you.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. I and and there's also like the supply and demand thing. Like obviously someone like James Cameron does think he's getting paid enough.
I mean, the guy has directed two out of like the top like or three now at this point, I guess. Like three out of the top five highest grossing movies of all time. So uh
Is it
like
three of the
yeah, I think it's both Avatar movies and Titanic. Believe it or
did that
not,
really make any
I
money?
okay, I gotta check this.
Sorry, folks, we gotta you know us by now.
Avatar, The Way of Water. I feel like it's like one of the highest grossing movies of all time now.
Because when I
Avatar.
heard it was out, I was like, oh, cool. And
Yeah,
then I
box
never heard
office $2.317 billion. The Avatar movies are such a weird phenomenon to me because they're movies that for whatever reason make like uh a rotundo hundo amount of money, but like they're movies that have no pop culture footprint whatsoever.
yeah, I'm just looking it up too. What so Puss in Boots made 440 million, but
Okay.
Avatar The Way of Water made 2.315 billion USD.
That new Puss in Boots movie I've heard is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've heard that it's like actually very entertaining. And the budget was 250 mil. What the fuck? Huh.
Um
Didn't they spend the last like decade like working on like 2, 3, and 4? Like, weren't they all made like all at once, and they're just like staggering their
2 and
releases?
3 were made together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Avatar: The Way of Water is the third highest grossing movie of all time. The first Avatar is the first.
Titanic is up there.
Titanic is number 4. Avengers Endgame is number 2. Star Wars. Hang on. Star Wars: The Force Awakens is number 5. Jesus Christ.
Really? Highest. Oh, well, that's episode 4, right? Sorry, episode
7.
7, right?
The one from 2015. It's
That
actually a
makes
pretty decent movie.
and
I'm not a big Star
well,
Wars fan, but
it's a movie. But
then Avengers Infinity War, Spider-Man No Way Home, Jurassic World, the live action
that
Lion
one
King
surprised
movie,
me. The live
and,
action
the Avengers.
the live action Lion King is like one of the worst movies to have ever been made in the last decade.
I
No,
haven't seen it.
so
Uh,
imagine scene by scene, it is the same as the animated movie, but instead of emotive cartoon animals, you have realistic animals that do not emote like
I
human emotions.
I hated that live action Beauty and the Beast movie
Didn't see it. Probably
because
never will.
I saw it in theaters. Imagine the animated movie, but worse.
That's
Imagine
how I
basically
pictured it.
Imagine like a really like shitty like cover song version of it, basically, which kind of fits because it's a musical. Imagine just like a really like shitty like covers, like someone like covering Freebird and doing like a really shitty version of it with like no guitar solo at the end, just like a constant riff
Like
playing.
a
Be-
bad metal or like
be-
rock.
because the guitarist of the band who is covering it can't solo that very well, so they just don't do a solo at all. Imagine that
Or
that
they
is
do
the
a synthesized
that is
version.
the live action Beauty and the Beast movie in a nutshell. And actually, podcasters that I've been listening to and talk about periodically, Bibbs and Whitney. The reason why I first started listening to them was because I listened to their podcast episode that was the worst movies of 2017, and I think number 3 on their list was the live action Beauty and the Beast. And I'm like, okay, I gotta listen to these guys. Cause like I walked out of that movie fucking hating it and like saw nothing but people, very basic people with like very uninteresting taste in film.
I've actually
Might add,
never met anybody who's liked it.
gushing about it on Facebook.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
So
well.
I was being bombarded on social media by people who had nothing but praise for this movie that I absolutely hated. So when I discovered Bibbs and Whitney uh, calling it like one of the worst movies of the year, I'm like, okay, I got to check these guys out. I'm their tastes intrigue me.
Kudos for Titanic staying so high up there,
Right?
because so
Well,
many of them are like modern, like huge hitting.
well, to be fair, they keep re-releasing Titanic in
And that's
theaters
the
every
thing.
few
And
years.
it's like background shading indicates films playing in the week commencing on April 14th, 2023 in theaters around world, which means, and there's a little symbol next to Titanic and Avatar, The Way of Water, which means like right now Titanic is being shown again.
Yeah. They keep re-releasing Titanic. They keep re-releasing the first Avatar movie.
Avatar, The Last Airbender movie, a classic. Speaking of bad movies.
And on that note, as we mentioned, this is episode 64 of the LaserCone podcast. And this week, as I also mentioned, we are continuing on with Rip in Peace Teletoon. And we're talking about a show called Clone High.
A very special show called Clone High.
Now, what I didn't realize until today when I was looking at the show's Wikipedia article was the show originally aired, like it aired first, like a good couple of years before it aired in the US. It aired on Teletoon
Yeah,
first, which is kind of wild to think about. The
it
show was
is.
co-created by Bill Lawrence, who is a very prolific TV writer and producer. He created Scrubs. He created Cougar Town. He created Ted Lasso, which is an amazing co-created Ted Lasso, which is an amazing show, and also co-created another Apple TV Plus, much like Ted Lasso, another Apple TV Plus series called Shrinking that I just watched. That I'm a big fan of.
Shrinking.
Yeah,
Wait, is that the one people are like, no, no, never mind.
I've talked about Shrinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shrinking's it stars Jason Segel. He plays a therapist. It's a really, really good show. So Bill Lawrence, pretty prolific in his own right. This show was also co-created by Lord and Miller, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who are big names in Hollywood now.
Never heard of them.
They hit it really big about a decade ago, writing and directing the 21 Jump Street reboot, which a lot of people loved. I wasn't so super hot on it, to be honest.
I liked it a lot.
Fair enough. Yeah. Like I remember being amused by it, but I didn't walk away from. I've never rewatched it.
I've
What I'll
watched
say.
it a few times.
I've only ever seen it the once, and
Put your tongue back in your mouth. Just put it back. I don't know. It reminds me of like the humor of Superbad and, well, I mean, Clone High.
we're gonna talk about Superbad. I mark my words.
But yeah, go on.
So they hit it big with the 21 Jump Street reboot. That movie got a sequel. For whatever reason, there hasn't been a third one. I remember there was talk. Do you remember back in like what was it, 2014, when North Korea hacked Sony Pictures and a bunch of like emails got out? One of the things that got out was there was talks of doing a 21 Jump Street and Men in Black crossover movie.
That couldn't have been real, and yet
it was. I feel like that's just an idea that like probably Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and like
it never got off the ideas.
it never got off the
Board.
ideas. But and like them and like Jonah Hill were probably just all baked in a room one day.
That's what I was thinking. And they were like, no, it'd be great.
Man, it'd be fucking tight if we the next Jump Street movie, Jump Street in Black, man. What? Jump
Yeah, and we
Street?
could get Will Smith
Men in
and Tommy Lee
Black.
Jones.
We could go Big Willie style. Fuck yeah.
Well, about that, two problems with getting those two people.
Yeah, so that never got off the ground. But anyway, so Lord and Miller, after the Jump Street movies, they found success doing writing and producing Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, which is legit one of the best Spider-Man movies.
I think it is the best. However, No Way Hombre is
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
I have actually watched No Way Hombre probably about a half a dozen times at this point. I really, really fucking like that movie.
It just does everything so right without trying to, like, it's so easy to make hey guys, like we have we've got like this crossover thing and it's cool, and like look, the jokes are fresh, we can keep it real. How do you do, my fellow kids? Kind of jokes, right? Like it's so easy to make a bad movie trying to emulate like Guardians of the Galaxy or Marvel like humor, but it's just right on that fucking sweet spot.
And all of the emotional stakes in that movie are earned.
That's what makes it for me. And that's why DC movies don't hit for me, is that the emotional stakes, I'm not invested in any of the emotions.
One thing I will say about emotional stakes in DC movies, though, that first
Mm,
Shazam movie,
emotional state. I like Shazam. It's
Shazam's
like
great.
the
Apparently,
only
that second
DC
one
movie that
that
I
just came
actually have said that I really like.
apparently that second one that just came out isn't that great, which is kind of disappointing. But like, there's a moment early on in that first Shazam movie where the main kid Billy Batson tracks down his mom who gave him up, and he goes to the door and he's like, "Hey, mom, I found you," and she's like, I gave you up for adoption because I didn't want you, kid. Go away." And like that is a genuinely like heartbreaking moment, and like you feel it when you're watching that film.
And that's
Like
the thing, if
you
there's no
feel it for
heart
the
in
kid.
it. Yeah, and like it can be when he gets all of his friends and they all become like adult like superheroes and they're figuring out their powers. That part feels like rushed and
Yeah.
stuff. But the kid and can't remember any of the actors right now, but the guy playing the adult that hit
Zachary
the
Levi.
Shazam of him. Fuck,
Apparently
they
he's in some
seem
controversy now for
uh
saying some unsavory things
of
on social
course.
media, which is a
But yeah,
shame
I was
because
gonna say like they
I've always
feel like
liked
the
him.
same person. That's how
Yeah.
well those two did. But yeah, we're not talking about all of that. We're talking about the creators of this. And
Yeah, yeah,
you know what? As
Lord and
soon
Miller.
as you
They were
said
also behind the Lego movie, which was way better than it had any right to be.
it, that was way better than like, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of like and like come at me because I'm aware that they are very like popular and very liked. I'm none of the Lego games ever resonated with me. Maybe I was too old. Maybe I didn't play it multiplayer, but maybe I didn't have younger people in my life. But I never liked Lego Star Wars, Lego Indiana Jones,
I liked
Lego
Lego
Batman,
Indiana Jones and the first Lego Batman, but I've tried to go back and play like newer
Lego Harry
installments, and
Potter.
they're boring. Like you can't even
I,
die in those games. Like you
yeah,
get blown apart into bricks and then you
and you
just
just come
respawn.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So I
I get it. They're meant for kids, but
like that's great for a 5-year-old. Like, but for a grown ass adult, nah, not so much.
you want to die, damn it, and you want it to have consequences.
I want to die, just
And I
like I
want
do in
there,
life.
and I want there to be consequences. The fuck? There's the weirdest text out of context quote we've done. I want to die. And I want there to be consequences.
I feel
I'm gonna
like there
post
is
that on Twitter.
no consequence greater than death,
Yeah, good point.
other than being canceled on Twitter.
That's true. But if you're canceled after you die, then at least you don't get to you're not around to see it. Um
So,
so what is
on
the
the
gist? Yeah. What
so on this episode of the Laser Cone podcast, as I mentioned, we're talking about Clone High. I swear we're going to talk about Clone High.
it's just there's a lot to it. And
There's a
you
lot
know
to it.
what? You could see the humor in those writers in their filmography, what they went
Yep,
on to do
totally,
in Clone High.
totally. We on the last episode, I put it through the old trusty random number generator. The show had 13 episodes in total, and miraculously, we landed on episode 1. It's not the first time. I think this is only the second time. No, second time. Yeah,
Preacher?
Preacher. Yeah, I was like
That
third,
was
but then I'm like, no, wait. The first episode of this very podcast, we covered what the hell was even the name of that show? It was a Patreon pick, anyway. But we just decided to start with the first episode. Dark Chronicle. That's what it was
Dark
called.
Chronicle. Man, I forgot that uh I wanted to, you know what, now that you've mentioned it, I think I want to check out another episode or two of that.
Yeah,
I have all of Preacher on my computer.
nice.
It made it through a few episodes.
So far, and it's an ongoing joke in this show where we're like, oh, we're totally gonna we're totally gonna watch through this entire series, and then we don't. I think the only time that's actually happened was me with Ash versus Evil Dead,
It was you with Ash versus Evil Dead over
which
the
I
next like
actually
week or
did.
so.
I watched like all 30 episodes of that show. Good show, especially if you like the Evil Dead franchise.
Oh yeah, and him playing the character. Um, it's hard to describe this. I'm sure we covered it on that episode of the Lasercomb podcast, but um, he plays Ash better now than he ever did before because he understands the trope. Like he understands the character because he's been the character for so long
Well, and
that when it comes to changing the character too, he it feels more real, which I think is why Ash versus
well,
the
and
Evil Dead works.
Ash as a character like kind of evolved throughout those movies. Like
That's what I mean.
originally he was just like a regular dude basically, and over time, by the time you get to Army of Darkness, he's kind of a smarmy, like almost cowardly at times asshole who's like he's a jerk to everyone. He doesn't. The only reason he wants to do any of this is because like he's only like
It makes him
slight.
somebody.
It makes him a somebody, and he's not even really like he's not terribly smart. He's not super great at anything except he is slightly better at dealing with this very specific problem than anyone else.
Slightly.
And by the time like like 30 years later, by the time or yeah 30 years later, by the time you get around to Ash versus Evil Dead, both him and the writers understand that that is the best version of Ash, where he is a snarky, like very selfish, self-involved asshole who is only doing this because it makes him noteworthy somehow.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if they're
Because he's
bringing...
not good at anything else.
I wonder. Oh, I know so many guys like that too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He feels like that age between like Gen X and Boomer. Like everybody has
Yeah.
an uncle like that,
Yeah.
right? Like he's trying to be the cool uncle, but like he's just kind of lives alone in a trailer.
Yeah, and quite literally he does in that show.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
this episode of Clone High is the first episode, as I mentioned, and it is called "Escape to Beer Mountain: a Rope of Sand," and it originally aired in Canada on November 2nd of 2002.
2002.
2002.
Yeah. And we're greeted with some of the main cast as they're walking to school, and presumably it's the first day of school. Because it's like, oh, hey, how's it going, Gandhi? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Well, I grew to an awkward height. And, well, here, the three students are Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, and Joan of Arc.
Real quick, the overall plot of this show
Yeah,
is
we keep jumping around.
it centers around a high school that is comprised entirely of students who are clones of important historical figures.
Exactly. Way back in the 1980s, secret government employees.
Yeah.
I can't remember word for word the exact intro. My friend,
it's fine. What I just mentioned is like really all you need to know.
they're
to
clones, and the
understand
experiment
show.
is them going to school for these clones. And the
Right.
thing is, it's self-aware. Like even the students know that they're the
Yeah, they
clones
know
of
they're
these.
clones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they know they're clones. JFK's dads are brought up later in the episode.
Yeah, I kind of took issue with that scene.
Oh, okay, then we can we'll actually comment on that when we get there. But yeah, the three they show up. Gandhi's like, I've been working on my high fives and finger snaps. And
So
Abraham Lincoln is like,
yeah, it's Abe Lincoln, Gandhi, and Joan of Arc. Which Joan of Arc, when I was watching this earlier, I was like, wow, this was every like this girl. This is a cartoon version of like every like alt kid's like mega crush in the early 2000s.
right, the successor of Daria,
Yeah.
of the other proto goth adjacent kind of girls, but instead of her being the interesting that they switched roles up in this, because instead of a guy trying to get a girl's attention, it's a girl. Well, it is a guy trying to get a girl's attention and a girl trying to get a guy's attention. It's all about the drama here, folks.
Yeah, there's a bit of a domino effect going on.
And I like the wordplay in this. It's like, oh, I grew taller and I've been growing out my sideburns. And Gandhi's like, oh, I've been working on my high fives and my finger snaps. Hey, Joan, high five. She just walks past him and he's like, too slow.
Well, and then Gandhi, it's a recurring joke in this scene. Like Gandhi takes note of the fact that she grew boobs over the
Oh, hey
summer.
guys, I'm back from summer camp or Christian. She's Joan of Arc, so
Yeah.
presumably it's like Christian summer camp. And he's like, oh, I see you've been growing too.
And I can't remember it verbatim, but he keeps referencing the fact that she has boobs in this scene, and
And she's like, you get one more, just
it's
very casually.
it's kind of lowbrow humor, but like I don't know, I laughed while I was watching it.
No, so did I. I laughed at quite. I actually marked the points I laughed in this, and the show gets directly to the point. Like it doesn't waste time. It doesn't like things stew. And I forgot that was one of its strengths. Like when they're at school, Joan is like, "Hey Abe, I've been thinking. I think I want to start dating." And Abe is just like staring at like Cleopatra, and he's like, "Uh-huh, yeah."
Cleopatra, by the way, voiced by the great Krista Miller, who
Oh,
people may know as Kate from the Drew Carey Show.
oh.
She also had a recurring role in Scrubs. She has a starring role in Shrinking. I'm guessing she's friends with Bill Lawrence because she
Since
pops
he
up in a lot of
started,
his stuff.
yeah,
I think Bill Lawrence was involved in the Drew Carey Show too. So I
must
feel
be.
like they're probably friends.
And yeah, she's a good voice actress. And as
Also,
Abe's staring,
Joan of Arc is voiced by, I wanted to point this out. What's her name? Uh, she is voiced by Nicole Sullivan, who Nicole Sullivan was the way too hot for Kevin James wife in the sitcom The King of Queens.
as someone who watched that
Yeah.
in their bored moments,
I remember watching that show back in the early 2000s and being like, this is not a realistic couple right here.
anyone listening is just like, what the fuck is King of Queens? That's what made James that's what
Kevin
made
James.
Kevin James's launched him launched his career.
Yeah, before Paul Blart, there was the King of Queens.
And then he milked the kind of like bumbling like fat dude, like not trope, typecast for as much as it was worth. And then he made like a wrestling movie or a boxing movie or something like that, and apparently it was really good. And then I never heard from him again.
He's been doing a lot of dramatic roles in recent years. There was a movie where he played a like white supremacist like killer.
Holy shit.
Was actually really good.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've heard that he's like a legitimate actor, but I just haven't seen any of his stuff. I also apparently don't watch a lot of movies. I've been movied out. I blame Marvel
Really.
and DC. Yeah.
I've been watching a lot more stuff lately. But I've also listeners I've talked about my issues with drinking in the past, and I've dramatically reduced that. And what I've found is that well, I'm more I have more drive to consume new media again.
How
Watch
dare you?
movies, watch
How
TV
dare you?
shows, play video games, etc., etc.
Probably more money.
More money too. Yes. Holy shit. Hence how I was able to just buy an Xbox Series X.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck, man?
Seven
Just get an
hundred and forty
inheritance.
dollars. No, I just my money situation's been a lot better since I've uh like only been drinking like once or twice a week for the
Good.
past few weeks.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Speaking of drinking, that's what this episode's about. Kind of,
Yes,
sort of,
kind
which
of.
brings us to a very good point Siege brought up.
Yeah, so the plot of this episode is basically the plot of the movie Superbad,
We
which
haven't
came
been covering it scene for scene because the episode is super bad.
it's super bad. So if you've seen the movie Superbad, it's about some
Great movie,
characters.
by the way.
It's a great movie. It's a movie that I resisted watching for a couple of years because I thought it was just like another like dumb like American Pie type thing. But then
American
when I
Pie or Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, kind of.
well, Harold and Kumar, I'll defend that first one anyway.
Me too.
But yeah, I assumed it was just like an American Pie, like stupid, like gross out, like teen comedy. But then I was seeing like a bunch of critics online whose opinions that I trusted raving about Superbad, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should check this out. And so I did, in like maybe like 2010, so a few years after it came out. And I'm like, no, this movie is fucking great.
It's very of its time.
It is, yeah.
It is like 2000s, like around the 2000 like 10 few years before and a few years after.
Mid 20. It came out in 2007, and it feels very 2007.
Exactly. And for the reason it feels very much so is because I like to think that was kind of the launching point for movies like, even though I think it had come out beforehand, like Grandma's Boy was beforehand or
It
around
was,
then.
yeah.
40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad, 21 Jump Street, like all of those movies, well, other than being by the same or
Judd Apatow,
related,
yeah.
creators, it launched that like sense of style, like Michael, what's his name,
Michael Cera, yeah.
That like awkward like sense of humor, like boom, like that was like the shit for like 5 solid years.
A comedy that I regularly rave about, I Love You Man, came out in 2009. I also feel, even though it's a more grown-up movie
I think it's more grown up.
Superbad, it is, but I feel like I Love You Man wouldn't exist without Superbad.
Yeah. Well, maybe not.
I feel like that
Yeah.
movie wouldn't have gotten made. Because like there was kind of a renaissance of comedies. Like comedies were really
That's what we're trying to say. There was a renaissance of comedies.
Comedies
Pineapple
were really
Express.
comedies were yeah, Pineapple Express. I love that movie. Comedies were really big in the 90s, like the early to mid 90s, and then they kind of died out like in the era of
Yeah.
like Mrs. Doubtfire and like Ace Ventura Pet Detective, The Mask, like movies like that. Comedies were really big in the early to mid 90s, and then they kind of tapered off for a while, and then in the mid to late 2000s they got huge again.
Yeah.
And we haven't had another comedic renaissance since. So I'm
There's
kind of
been
wondering.
great comedy movies, but not like that explosion, not a renaissance.
I'm kind of wondering when it's gonna happen again, because it will. Every genre has its time in the sun,
And I hope that we're young and hip enough to actually appreciate the humor, because the next renaissance of comedy may not be geared towards our age. Oh, who am I kidding? Everything's geared towards.
It won't be.
It
Nor
won't
should
be.
it be, to be perfectly honest.
Mhm.
We had our day. We had our
All I know
our
is
era.
I didn't understand or like the Emoji Movie. Damn it! But also that
I
was a
didn't
different
find a
movie.
goddamn thing funny in whatever movie. I didn't find a goddamn thing funny. I don't understand the humor, and I don't think anyone else should be exposed to this kind of tomfoolery. It's bad for the children. Too many gays in it too.
Florida Man 2023. I mean, kind of.
Yeah, kinda. Oh
Yeah.
God.
Can't wait to retire. Yeah, Rhinox is a retired trucker in Florida. Confirmed. One of the first jokes that actually had me laugh, you said you chuckled at the boobs, and you get one more
Yeah.
joke, was Cleo's talking to Abraham Lincoln, and she's all like, "Oh, Abe, I noticed your sideburns have grown a couple inches longer." And Abe is like, and he's like stumbling over his words like an idiot. And Gandhi comes up and he's like, "Hey, Cleo, high five, up high." And she's like, "Do I know you?" And he's like, "We were in every single class together last year." And she just stares at him and he lifts up his shirt. He's like, "I gave you one of my kidneys." And
And
it zooms in onto his kidney. And I can't remember the special voice actor. Like this one little line, it zooms in on his like kidney with a little cartoon kidney. And apparently this is I can't remember who it is, but at the time I remember seeing in the credits, I'm like, "Oh shit, it's this guy." And it just zooms in on one of his kidneys. And the kidney says, "I miss him." And I'm like, what the
and
fuck?
Cleopatra still doesn't remember him,
She
and he's
still
like,
doesn't get it.
And we lived in the same foster home for 10 years until you got me kicked out
Yeah, she's like,
because you said I wasn't cool enough or something like that.
yeah, he's like, "I was your foster brother for 10 years until you convinced our parents I wasn't good enough for your image. You had
So
me transferred to another home." And I'm like,
oof.
I've anyone listening, I've been in the foster system, and apparently it's way worse in the States. Like if they don't want you, they can just give you away.
Yeah.
It's called like transference of, I can't remember. There was like a mini doc on like YouTube about it. Or I first learned about it through like a TikTok talking about it, and it's like, what the fuck? To become a foster parent and then,
So real quick
anyways.
to circle back to why I brought up Superbad in the first place
Oh
is
yeah.
so the plot of Superbad. I kind of got off on a tangent.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the plot of Superbad involves a couple of teenagers who want to go to a party so they can hook up with girls, and the way that they get themselves invited to this party is that they agree to bring booze because all these characters are underage. And what ensues throughout the film is various shenanigans as things like continuously go wrong as they try to get the booze and make it to this party.
And the reason they bring in a third friend that they don't really want to go out with because he's
McLovin.
embarrassing is because they have a friend with a fake ID. And that's what launches. And they have a friend that's a little embarrassing in Clone High with
Yeah,
a fake ID. I think it's Genghis Khan, but like the clone didn't go right,
right.
right? Because he's like he, I can't remember how, but like it's implying that he's like handicapped of some kind, right?
Yeah.
And
So yeah, so the reason why I bring up Superbad is that's the plot of Superbad. That is literally the plot of this episode of Clone High. This episode of Clone High came out 5 years before Superbad. So I feel like uh, Seth Rogen, who co-wrote the movie Superbad,
yeah,
I feel like he got baked and watched this show and thought that this was a great idea for a movie.
apparently Seth Rogen and
Evan
uh
Goldberg.
were Seth Rogen and I can't remember, but they were supposed to be the main actors, and they were like, "Let's actually like get
They
young
decided
actors."
Seth Rogen and Bill Hader,
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
because they had tried to get the movie made for a few years, and by the time it finally got made they realized they were too old to be playing high school kids, so they show up later in the movie as a couple of cops.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And they even are like, "Oh, like we just wanted you to think we were cool." And like they fit them. themselves into that movie pretty well, actually.
Which, if you watch the movie Superbad, and apologies, listeners, for continuously bringing up Superbad when we're supposed to be talking about Clone High, but if you watch Superbad with the knowledge that was originally supposed to be Seth Rogen and Bill Hader, you totally see it in the characters. Like Jonah Hill's character is
It
definitely
was
Seth
written
Rogen.
for them.
Yeah. Michael Cera's character, like, is definitely Bill Hader.
Definitely.
Like, you see it.
And to give Michael Cera and
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill credit, like nobody could have done better than them
Right.
in that.
You know what's crazy is they're like our age now.
I guess they were always our age then.
Yeah. Well, they were always our age, but I mean, like, thinking about it like in terms of now, though, like,
It's weird to think about.
The kids from Superbad.
What we're saying
like,
is they were a lot more successful
pushing
than
40.
we were.
Or even older. Like, how old were
Are they older?
How old were they?
While Siege is looking up how old they are, we're introduced to the principal.
Yeah, Jonah Hill is, he's 39. He was born in December of 83, so he's almost 2 years older than I am.
Yeah, and
Michael Cera is...
Ooh, excuse me, folks. The
Michael Cera is 34.
Yeah, I knew there was around our age. Wasn't sure how much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like kind of like this general guy who represents the board of shadowy figures.
Right.
Who always steps out of the shadows to talk to the principal.
Yeah.
And later on in the show, the board of shadowy figures is very synonymous with the board of Teletoon. And when it comes to their budget and the school being shut down, aka the show being canceled, is very maybe if you were younger, you didn't get how on the nose that was.
I didn't pick up on it when I was watching this like 20 years ago.
Or
no, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. I did at the time.
Oh,
yeah. And it's different if you rewatch the whole thing with that in mind. Because you can see the points at which like the exact like episode in which like it was like, hey, you guys like are gonna get like canceled soon. Oh, hey, actually you guys got like more funding, so you can do like this many more episodes or whatever. And it's just like, haha, we could finish the school year, Mr. Butlertron.
There's a you don't see this super often, but there's a phenomenon that happens sometimes in TV when like they find out like midway through a season that a show has been canceled, but they're allowed to like finish off the season, so they just get like they go like hog wild with the final episodes.
This is
I love it when that happens.
They left it in a frozen state.
Yeah.
Like literally like just in case.
And indeed, they're being brought back for 2 more seasons.
Decades later. Which is funny because in the show, apparently, like the new show, they've actually been frozen for 20 years.
Oh,
so when
sweet.
so when they wake up, like smartphones, like it was set in its time and it's going to be set in this time. But the only reason it works for this show instead of say undergrads or other shows, right, is because they were actually frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, spoilers for Clone High. They're frozen at the end of the experiment is defunded.
Put on ice.
Put on ice. Have you seen Demolition Man? But yeah, they were like, myself and the others at the board, the general dude is like, are worried that you may be possibly slightly insane. And the principal's like, what? Insane? Ha, blasphemy. And he takes off his paper hat and he opens a drawer behind his desk that says pirate hats.
Yeah, that made me laugh. The fact that the drawer was labeled pirate hats and it's full of paper hats.
Delicately places it in it and slides it shut. And he's like, blasphemy. And then a little robot with wearing a sweater vest
The
comes out of nowhere.
the mad scientist guy who is the principal is voiced by Phil Lord,
Oh,
and JFK is voiced by Chris Miller.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Lots of good and lots of guest voice actors on the show too.
Apparently, Donald Faison, who played Turk in Scrubs, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
Bill Lawrence show, he guest stars in a bunch of episodes as like Martin Luther King Jr. and George Washington Carver,
George Washington Carver.
amongst others.
Yeah.
Andy Dick does the voice of the Sheep Man,
Yeah, they've got an old professor. So
which is really funny
introduces
because
us to their homeroom.
it's like this hybrid, like human sheep.
He's the first successful human, and by the way, he has hooves for fingers.
Yeah.
So when he does quote, first human hybrid clone, bah.
And the joke there is like the first like instance of cloning that ever took place in history was in like I think 1995, and it was they cloned a sheep. So
Yeah.
the joke here that like the that there's this like old man like clone who is like half man, half sheep is kind of funny to me.
I like it. Yeah, and he's a reoccurring character.
But he's him and the police officer and Vincent Van Gogh, who are all characters that appear in this episode, are voiced by Andy Dick.
Oh, really? Because all three of them have some of the funnier
Yeah.
parts to this. Like at one point,
Uh,
he's like, "Oh, it's getting hot in here. I better take off my sweater." And he like puts up a buzzsaw and he like starts shearing himself. Ready for the weekend, baby.
I just did that to my head today, as a matter of fact.
That's right. He's stone colding this.
Yep.
No more bullshit haircuts.
Yeah, no more bull.
You did it, folks.
Yeah.
You wore him down.
That guy who called me out for having a bullshit hairstyle, he finally won the day. It took like nearly a year, but he won.
Damn it.
On the subject of guest stars, though, Zach Braff, who played JD in Scrubs, he was the main character.
Yeah.
Has a recurring role in a couple of episodes, and also Sarah Chalk, who was also in Scrubs, guested in another episode as the voice of Marie Antoinette. Now, Sarah Chalk, I have run into in person probably about a half dozen times over the years.
Oh, really?
I shit you not. I have run into her in Nanaimo. I've run into her in Vancouver. I've run into her in Victoria. And I've even run into her on the ferry, the Nanaimo to Vancouver ferry. I've run into her, I think, like 6 or 7 times over the years.
Has she ever recognized
No, I've never
and been like,
No,
hey,
I've
you're
never-
the guy I keep running into.
No, I've never. No, I've just like I've seen her out in public and like
You've just recognized her, yeah.
and recognized her, yeah.
Seen her out in public.
And it just became funny that I kept like spotting her like over and over and over again. And then finally, like not the last time, but like the second to last time I ran into her, which I think was the time on the ferry, I finally just said to her, "Hey, I really, really like Scrubs." And she's like, "Oh, thanks." And that was that.
Brad.
Yeah.
So you got to say something.
Yeah.
I got to park Seth Rogen's car.
I feel like I don't know if you've mentioned it on air, but I feel like you've told me that before.
I've told you this before, but I used to work at a very bougie, as the kids say, hotel. And dude drives a super old smart car. It reeks of weed.
Of course.
Barely like runs. Like a smart car, like that's barely like keeping it together. And he's exactly how you would think. Oh, hey, yeah, there's like coffee in the lobby. And I'm like, you know what? It's probably like hours old. It'll take me like 5 minutes to brew. Brand new. I mean, if you want to drink like fresh coffee at like midnight, like it's no problem at all. And he's like, really? Yeah, yeah. So I brewed coffee for this guy at like 1 a.m., like midnight, right? And it's
See,
something we have to keep hot anyway. And yeah, he
he
comes
strikes
down in a
me.
house robe,
He
right? And
strikes me as the kind of guy who would be like, "No, man, I got coffee right here. This is fine. This is good."
and so he comes down in a robe, right? And he like makes two to like bring up in the room. And he like sips one with a lid and he's like, ooh, hot. And just like awkwardly, like I'm at the front desk and I just like wave to him or whatever. He's like, yeah, thanks. And he's like waiting for the elevator. He's like, coffee. Yep. Like awkwardly, like just wants to stay up late and like, I don't know, like
Hell
smoke.
yeah. Hell yeah. Coffee.
Just he's in
Hell
his like
yeah.
fucking robe.
Fuck yeah. I got coffee, man.
Right. And so yeah, like, and I was just like, I don't know what I expected, but he's exactly the same, exactly how I pictured.
Right.
Like juggling. I can't remember, like might have had like grabbed like an apple from the fruit stand or something. And oh, I think he ended up buying one of the ropes because
Oh
like
yeah.
they were so soft. And yeah, the people loved the robes there. Yeah, they're
I
expensive too, and people
I
would buy
didn't
them.
I didn't even know you could do that at hotels.
Yeah, you can go to the front desk and like be like, hey, can I like buy this? Or hey, do you have those soaps in the rooms? Or hey, I liked like this. And they'll be like, sure.
I just steal that stuff.
Yeah. A robe a little bit more difficult.
Well, a robe, no, but like things the toiletries, like I'll steal.
Oh, they have to replace them anyway
Yeah.
if they're used even once. So anyone listening, by the way, like they have to put out those new at least places worth their like fucking salt. They I hope have to replace like the little bars of soap and like the shaving kits and that kind of thing. So like they're gonna throw them away anyway.
A hotel that
So
I've
fucking
stayed
take
at
them.
a few times over the years, the Strathcona in
I have a feeling they
Victoria.
don't.
No, they do.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
they're
they're
pretty good
pretty
there.
by the
Yeah.
books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of by the books, Principal is told by shadowy figure that if he doesn't make a report by the end of the week, well, he just has to. And Principal is like, and what if I refuse? And it's like, then we kill you. And he's like, all right. Well, in that case, I am going to title this right away as The Life of a Teen. Life of a Teen, semicolon, a rope of sand. And Mr. Butler,
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr.
Butler
Butler
Tron,
is funny. There's a recurring joke in this episode
Wesley.
where he calls everyone Wesley.
Yeah, he calls the general, would you like some scones? Wesley. He calls everyone Wesley. I don't know why. Um, and he
And
does
then
that throughout the
it
whole season.
I didn't know if it was like the full series or
It's
just
every
this
episode.
episode. But
Yeah.
in this episode, um he'll like, and later on in the episode, like he says like something like really profound and meaningful to Joan
He
of Arc.
finds Joan of Arc by herself on a swing.
And
Also super bad.
Yeah.
There's a girl sitting on the swing and Jonah Hill like comes out to like talk to her and he's like drunk and he's like, I just wanted you to think I was like cool.
Yeah.
But that's a trope, so
Yeah.
whatever.
But yeah, so the robot guy, Mr. Butler, tells Joan of Arc something like really profound and meaningful later in the episode, and he gives this big spiel and then pauses for a moment and then is like, Wesley.
And she's like, but yeah, he gives Mr. Butlertron has these like moments where he gives the teenagers like emotional like support. Like Joan falls on her like knees and she's like, I love you, Mr. Butlertron. And he's like, no problem. And the camera like zooms out. Wesley.
Also, I like when she puts her arms around him, his antenna immediately like boings up straight
And his
upward.
eyes are like, oh, by the way, he's wearing the sweater vest. He has a little bow tie. And he has googly eyes.
Yeah.
Like they're never looking in the same direction. And he's just a little like square robot with like 3 wheels. He's kind of designed like a Jetsons.
Yeah, that's I got Jetsons vibes from this.
Yeah.
I
But
don't know.
yeah,
I found the sight gag of as soon as she like put her arms around
I
him,
didn't
his
catch
antenna immediately like boings upward, like
I
straight
like
upward.
that.
I'm like,
And
ah, that's funny.
the writing
Me
before
too,
we
Mr. Robot. Me
me
too.
too. Me too, Mr. Robot. Me too, Butlertron. Um, the writing knows exactly what it wants to be and it delivers. I
Right.
like it more now that I'm watching this as an adult than as a teenager. Um, the animation, it is like consistent. Like it has a look to everything there.
It kind of reminds me of the animation style of the Clerks cartoon. Like it's not the same, but it's reminiscent of that.
Like yeah, and it uses very simplified backgrounds that are reminiscent of Hanna-Barbera. Like the background's just blue and there's like a simple little tombstone shape for urinals, right? When characters viewed from the sign, it only shows like one leg.
Right.
If you like look at they have very certain like stances that you always see them from.
Speaking
Right?
of the
And
Clerks
it
cartoon,
works.
it does work, yeah. We should review the Clerks cartoon on
Oh
this
yeah.
show. I don't know why
Yeah,
we
because
haven't
again,
so
that
far.
was only eight episodes.
6. Fuck it, let's do it on the next episode of this podcast. Why not?
There you go. Yeah. And yeah, so I can't remember. I think it's JFK. Yes, JFK. And he's a jock in the school. And he comes because he hears word that well, one, he's kind of sort of rivals with Abe, and he doesn't like them because they're nerds, him and Gandhi. And he comes to razz them in the bathroom and say, "You're not coming to my party if I didn't make it clear. You're not invited."
I'll see you at my party tonight, except I won't see you
Because you won't be
Be-
there.
because you won't be there. You want to know why? Because you're not invited.
If I didn't already make that clear.
If I didn't already make it clear, you aren't coming to my party.
So what I like
And
about
like
it,
during
he's
each
dumb.
each
All the
line,
characters are dumb.
each line of dialogue there, he would leave because I think they were in a bathroom or something. He would
Right. He
leave
goes, "You're
and
not
then would come
invited."
back
He closes the door. "To my party."
in case I didn't make that myself clear. And then comes
then he
back
comes
in
back
and
and
is
he's like-
like, forgot to wash my hands. And
Yeah.
then the camera just lingers on him washing his hands for so long, washing his hands so thoroughly.
With Abe and Gandhi awkwardly standing in the bathroom. So there's 2 ways to do the lingering shot, right? Or
Yeah.
sorry, there's the lingering shot gag, right? Where
Yeah.
something goes on for so long it becomes funny. You can screw that up a lot of ways. One of the ways is doing it like Family Guy does it,
Yeah.
where it's just something unexpected and you laugh at the stupidity of it, but it doesn't have a lot of staying power. I remember the first one people probably noticed is like when Peter like hurts his knee in a gag,
Fuck, I
and
hate that.
and it became a fucking meme of him grabbing his knee and going, "Ah, ah." I hate that. That is
And
how
it
you
will
do
go
it
on
wrong.
for like a solid like minute too.
And too long. You can't do
Yeah.
it too long. Also, there's no gag there. Right? The gag here is I forgot to wash my hands after he
The-
just made like 3 dramatic exits.
Yeah,
That's
he
funny.
just made a bunch of dramatic exits, being an asshole to them, but then realizes he actually has to come back in and then just awkwardly like do his thing while they're standing there.
It's like when you say goodbye to somebody, but then
And then
you
go the
run
same way.
into them and go. But the thing is, instead of just hanging out or keep continuing talking or whatever, you kind of just go about your business.
Yeah.
So I think they eat
Or
at a
like
diner.
or like I mentioned when you say bye to someone but then you both go to leave but you're actually going the same direction.
Yeah, and you're like, and do like the hello fellow coworker smile,
Yep.
where you like purse your lips, and the white guy coworker smile. It's where you do a high flat lipped smile and nod your head.
Yep.
Everyone knows it.
Or just like
Um,
walk by someone and like make eye contact and be like, "Oh yeah."
and
That's a thing that I run into a lot.
yeah, people saying, "Oh yeah,
"Oh yeah."
oh," at your work.
Yeah, yeah, at work. Not
Yeah,
not even just my current workplace, but just workplaces in general. I don't know, maybe it's like a grocery dude thing.
maybe it's a grocery dude thing. Speaking of dude thing, no, it has nothing to do with that. I just realized that the diner they're always shown at is called the Grassy Knoll. A humorous pun, but like that's how one of the clones fucking like that's the conspiracy of how one of the clones, JFK, like his original. That's weird. Like, why would you want to eat there?
Uh for the listeners and for me, can you explain the joke? Because I don't get it.
Um, the oh, it wasn't. Uh, my mind is blanking here right now, folks. Medication and stuff. But it wasn't dude up in the building. There was another sniper that got JFK, a sniper from the Grassy Knoll,
Oh, okay.
which was like another area, and there's like different photographs
Lee
come out
Harvey
at the time.
Oswald.
There we go. And the angle that he shot them from, he shouldn't have been able to hit them. It actually came from a much lower angle, and he had intended to go and shoot them, but it like wasn't him. And so the conspiracy that he was like the fall person, and there was actually a different. Watchmen plays on this joke.
He's a patsy.
The Watchmen with
Yeah, yeah.
the comedian, where it
Yeah.
shows him, it implies he's actually the shooter from the Grassy Knoll.
Oh yeah, yeah, during
Yeah,
during that montage,
the
yeah.
montage thing. Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. So but the show's a little bit like dark and like does humor like that. I just find it interesting that they're all cool with it, but they're also all teenagers, which means they're dumb.
That it's kind of tongue in cheek. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
It's clever.
and as someone who remembers how dumb I was, as man, is there anything cringier than being a teenager that thinks that they're really smart? I'm sorry, but like there's no teenager that's actually very smart. Unless, like you were like
Doogie Howser.
unless you were Doogie Howser. There you go. And
I've
yet,
actually I've at my last job there were quite a few kids in who worked in grocery who were quite smart, but they were ignorant about a lot of things. Like they had the ignorance of youth to them.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
You're just not alive that long.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
actually one of
and
my favorite things about growing older is just the wisdom that comes with age.
yeah, it's not that we're like sharper or like keener. It's just that we've been around so long, we seem like we're very smart.
We've just seen more.
We've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
I've seen shit that'll turn you white.
Uh, but I think they're introduced to like George Washington Carver,
As I
and
mentioned, voiced by Donald Faison,
he's like,
Turk from Scrubs.
and he's another one of the geeks. And he's like, oh, hey, haven't seen you guys all summer. I've been away bioengineering this sentient peanut,
Yeah,
anthropomorphic peanut. And he's a play on the who's that mascot for that nut brand?
planters.
Planters nuts or like whatever. He's like a
Yeah,
Mr. Like he's got a monocle and like a
isn't he
hat.
just called Mr. Peanut?
I think he's just Mr. Peanut. Yeah.
Yeah,
But this one's sideways. And he's like, hi ho, chaps. I would shake your hand, but oh, what does he say? I'd shake your hands, but peanut
yeah,
arms.
yeah. He's Mr. Peanut.
Yeah, Mr. Peanut.
Ha! From 2013 to 2017, he was voiced by Bill Hader. It's funny.
Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut, yeah, on commercials
It all
for 4 years there.
comes
Uh,
full
that,
circle.
that's why I brought that up, because I'm like, that's funny. We were just talking about Bill Hader.
Rad. So what is it? Joan is very much like, hey, how about instead of worrying about who or what we're seen with or popularity, you do something that actually matters.
Sorry. On the Wikipedia page for Mr. Peanut, it says occupation, mascot, gentleman, hero.
Mascot, gentleman, hero. That's a good write-up. And and Joan of Arc,
so dumb.
she's running like a teen helpline, right?
Teen help hotline.
Teen help hotline, and Gandhi says he'll do it because he's a friend or a bro, and he doesn't think that they'll be able to go to the party anyway. And indeed, Abe and them are leaving the diner, and JFK gets up and he's like, "Mark my words, Abe, you and your geek friends aren't coming to the party." And Abe is like, "I'll I'll bring the beer," and he's like, "I'll see you at 8." And Cleo like walks past him and she's like, "Ooh, oh, Abe," or maybe this is later in the episode. There's nothing that gets me hotter than underage drinking. And another point where I actually like laughed. And I'd forgotten how funny this show was.
The show is
Genuinely.
quite funny. I was surprised too at how laugh out loud funny it was. But then I'm like, the show was written by Bill Bill Lawrence and then Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. I'm like, those three together. The show couldn't possibly not be funny.
Yeah. And at one point, Abe is like, "I'm going to be so dead. I have no idea how I'm going to get the booze." And Gandhi is like, "Hey, maybe instead of saying, 'Oh, yeah, I'll get the beer,' you just say, 'No, what I actually said was, I'll get the beards.'" And Abe just like stares at him and he's like, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And he's like, "Yeah, but the party would still be lit." And it zooms into like his imagination.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Man, awesome party." And they're all wearing fake beards. And they're like, "Thanks, Gandhi." And Gandhi gives a thumbs up with a fake beard. And on his arm is like a hot, like curvy, like babe with like a fake beard. And then it zooms back into reality. And Gandhi's just like,
I love Gandhi's enthusiasm in this show.
amazing.
Like, it's extremely endearing. Just how like very like excited he is all the time.
All the time. And the it's just very funny too, because their height difference is it's they don't make a deal of it, but it's part of that like physical comedy. Normally you can't translate physical comedy into a cartoon that easily. That's not slapstick, right?
Right.
Like someone punching someone or like whatever. But the way Gandhi always looks up at Abe, and Abe like looks confused, or like, because he never, part of some of the episodes are when they like butt heads, but they're still like best friends, right? And
Right.
it's just funny because you see these like two awkward like teenagers, and like one's like trying his like best to like be cool, or they're both trying their best to be cool, but different ways. Like one's trying to be cool and, "Oh, hey, Cleo, ha ha ha," and like aloof, and the other one's just going for it. And I feel like at some point I've been both of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Same.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna be cool and I'm gonna be quiet and like, just like stick to myself and be like mysterious, dark and mysterious." And then like when that didn't work, I was the Gandhi.
I was very much the Gandhi type in my early 20s.
Yeah,
But Abe, Abe the
me
rest of
too.
my life, pretty much.
Oh, the opposite for me. Abe in my early adult life, and then Gandhi when I stopped giving fucks. But as we find out in a later episode, Gandhi has ADD. Gandhi has
Oh,
ADD, a disease
interesting.
with initials. That's the worst kind. And so do I. In case that wasn't obvious. So their McLovin is Genghis Khan. And their depiction of Genghis Khan is an extremely friendly, but very big and strong uh force sensitive fellow, who
Right.
the first when I watched this as a teenager, I was like, haha, that's funny. As an adult, and I'm like, don't abuse this guy. He thinks you guys want to be friends with him. Again, like McLovin, right? Um, and so they're like, okay, so if the clerk asks you if you're 21, we don't have a fake ID, but you just say what? And he's like, no, no, Genghis Khan. You say yes. Yes. Okay, got it. And he goes in and he fails. And they're like, okay, let's try again. Now try with me. What do you say if they ask if you're over 21?
Well, and indeed, to bring up Superbad again, their initial attempts to go in and buy booze fail in comedic ways, and they
Mhm.
have to like leave and then regroup
Yeah.
and try again. I think I might actually watch Superbad after we're done recording. I own it on Blu-ray.
Maybe we should do a commentary. Add that to the
Add
list.
that to the pile.
Yeah. They almost get away with it. And there's again sight gags. Like there's a wrong way and a right way to do it. And there's
Right.
a dated way. Like if you watch Scooby-Doo, the sight gag, well, one, it's meant for a younger audience. But two, the sight gags on it are very dated. And they do apparently buy a keg of beer. And the lady just goes, are you 21? Well, your sign says you're 21. Okay. And they pay for it. And he goes, thank you. And he walks away and immediately comes back into frame and he goes, I'm not 21. So I kind of like picture Genghis Khan in this universe as like very pure of heart,
Yeah.
which is funny because it shows him with like incredibly destructive, like superhuman strength. So it kind of implies Genghis Khan took over, uh, took started his empire, the largest empire in human history, I believe, because he was just dumb and strong.
It's just through brute force.
I mean, yeah, he kind of just did brute force the whole world, didn't he? Yeah, so Scudworth kidnaps Joan because he's going to interrogate her about what it's like to be a teenager.
Right.
But instead of like torturing her or whatever, he's like, all right, Joan, Miss of Arc, or whatever he says.
No, he does say Miss of Arc, which was
Yeah.
another thing that I laughed at.
The Miss of Arc. And then his interrogation is just being like, what are your hobbies and interests? What frustrates you at school? Like they're just like things that a school therapist, which I think there should be school counseling, not school therapist, school counseling. It's amazing that that's not a thing in every school. Like we can do
No.
better than that. Come on. But anyways,
Didn't realize that wasn't the thing.
was there one in your high school?
Yes, actually there was.
Oh,
Well, we had
shit.
I went to a school for bad kids, so we had like a counselor slash social worker who was at the school all the time.
Right. What did they call those schools? They called them
Alternative schools.
alternative. Yeah. So they actually did have counselor there.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Mine
she was
didn't.
she was a nice lady.
I moved to a town and there was a school counselor there. And in the first like few months I was there was no longer a school counselor. And I was like, oh, well, and I needed one. um, but what happens? There's a tube that comes up, it sucks Joan of Arc into his death maze as Scudworth like maniacally laughs. He's always wearing a lab coat and like yellow dish gloves
Right.
for whatever reason. And go forward. Here we go. The problematic part number one. It decides Scudworth decides that him and Mr. Butlertron are going to infiltrate by pretending to be kids and go to the party.
Right.
So we cut to JFK's house where he's on the phone.
And they I remember the principal and Mr. Butlertron show up, and the principal is very
Did
much
you want to
like how
talk about the gay dads?
uh I I
Nah,
I,
yeah.
I found that scene a little I rolled my eyes because I found it a little like dated and it was playing into like stereotypes.
Well, one of them is like a tough dude smoking a cigar and is supposed to be like the dad, and the other one is like very like has an accent and
It's
is like the
very
mom dad,
is very effeminate, very like classic like sitcom
well
gay.
dressed and like whatever, and they're like, "Oh, honey, doesn't he look good?" Also, the dad is wearing lipstick.
Yeah.
I And they're like, "What? You think you're too good enough to be gay, like your old man, like your old man's, or like whatever?"
I
And his
yeah,
husband
I
is like, Carl, baby was just born that way. And I'm like,
I
I,
found the entire
they're
scene
not trying to be
cringeworthy.
offensive. It's just a little like cringe, but also
It's dated.
it's supposed to be funny because of the inverse being so
Yes.
common. So I get the joke at the time. They were trying to be progressive by mocking straight cu- cis
They
couples that
they were trying to turn I feel like they were trying to turn like the gay like the sitcom gay stereotype, which was really big in the 90s.
do poke
The
fun at it.
I feel like they were trying to like turn that on its head. And at the time, it may have been funny, but now watching it, I'm kind of just like,
Eh,
just rolling my eyes. I'm like,
yeah.
this is kind of cringeworthy.
So what ends up happening at the party, Siege? I think Abe tells Gandhi that
All he could get
you're
was
gonna be in.
all he could get was a keg of de-alcoholized beer.
Well, he doesn't tell Gandhi.
Oh, right. He doesn't tell Gandhi. He tells
Right.
Joan. Right.
Gandhi F's off because Abe is like, you're going to be in big trouble because you promised Joan that you were going to be at the teen crisis hotline. Don't worry, I just forwarded all of the calls to my cell phone. Ding ding, how to tell what year it is, folks. Check out
He's got
these
a
cell
flip phone.
phones that you have to pull the antenna out of. It is a 2002
Yeah.
like cell phone, right? And like when like do they even text each other in this? Like I
No, they don't.
no, they still use it as phones.
My
Um
first cell phone that I ever got was in the mid 2000s, so a couple of years after this, but mid 2000s, and it was a silver Samsung phone with like a blue face on it, and you had to like flip it open and pull an antenna up.
did we have the same? It's
Prob
silver and
maybe
blue, right?
silver and blue Samsung.
Yeah. Not very expensive at all.
No.
Yeah, just used like minutes bought from 7-Eleven.
Yep.
Yeah. We probably had the same. Shout out if you're listening to this and you had the same fucking phone. It was like 25 bucks,
Yeah.
maybe 35 Canadian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could probably literally get it in plastic, like bubble plastic
I
at
remember I never for the first like year or two, like 2 years, the first 2 years that I had it, I never even texted anyone because I didn't know what text messaging was. I would just call people. I found out what text messaging was because I started dating a girl who then just started texting me. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I didn't text anybody because it was a fucking dollar to like
Oh
send
yeah. Yeah.
messages or something.
Yeah, that's the thing is back then, like
Wow, we're really
sending text
okay. Yeah, let's
messages.
talk about this.
Yeah, sending text messages was like you could add it to your plan. You could add like not even unlimited, but you could be like, oh, 250
250 text
text
messages for
messages per month
$20.
for like an extra $20 per month. Like otherwise it was like anywhere depending on the carrier, it was anywhere from like 25 cents to a fucking $1.50 each text message.
Sometimes to receive them.
And to receive them. Yeah, you had to pay
Yeah.
to receive text messages
So
too.
if somebody like texted you 8 times,
Yeah.
fuck, and dark times, if you're younger than us, imagine growing up in the dark ages of technology.
It's
Um, and if you're
crazy to
older
think
than
about
us,
now.
then pretend we didn't say that, because you grew up with like jacks and marbles and like that game with like the stick and the hoop.
I remember getting a prepaid plan where I could pay, I think it was $50 a month. So I had to prepay for $50, but for 30 days it would give me, I think it was 100 anytime minutes,
Any anytime minutes.
unlimited evenings and weekends after 6 p.m., unlimited incoming calling, unlimited incoming text messages, and text messages were only 10 cents each. Outbound
And
text messages.
outbound. But if you didn't renew your plan by the end of the month, you'd lose all the minutes.
Yeah.
So, but you could buy a card, a minutes card, that would
Yep.
extend it by a month,
Yep.
and you'd keep the minutes. So you end up just keep buying these month cards
Yep.
and these minutes. And so you have 1,194 minutes on your account.
Oh, and the voicemail messaging system would go on for so long to use up your minutes too. When you go to
With
check
huge
your
pauses in between.
yeah, and it was straight up to use up your
Which of
minutes.
course used minutes.
It did use minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
And like it would be like you have one unlimited or you have one unheard voice message. To play your messages, press blah blah, and you would press that number, but it would still keep talking. It wouldn't do anything. It would still keep talking. To do this, press blank. To do this,
You'd
press
have to
blank.
wait for the whole
You'd have to
voice thing
wait
to
for the
go by.
entire thing to finish. It would take literally like 2 or 3 minutes. And it's like, great.
And now you can interrupt it. right?
And then you can interrupt it. And it's like, oh great, I've just wasted like 3 of my 100 anytime minutes.
To check your voicemail, press 7. To repeat these messages, smash the phone on the ground now.
There's a joke in season 5 of Red versus Blue, which I think came out in 2006 or 2007, where one of the characters, Church, is on the phone with one of these like voicemail things, voicemail robot ladies, like talking to him. And it's like, to do blah blah, press 11. And he just flips out and he's like, there is no 11, you fucking whore.
Wow. It's a good troll.
Anyway.
Unexpected insults. I tend to find those gags funny,
Yeah.
right? Like the what out of place insults like that. So what ends up happening in Clone High here? Oh, Joan, again, she's an activist. She doesn't believe in underage drinking. She like wants to do the right thing, right? She shows up at the party and Gandhi like does like a triple sal cow off the porch, off the second story to escape because he doesn't want her to see him. And she's like, well, are you happy? You contributed into like drunken underage like debauchery. And he's like, well, probably not. I wasn't able to get the alcohol, so this is non-alcoholic. And he's like, yeah, they'll probably be able to tell. And Joan looks off of the balcony and sees people streaking and like acting like idiots and like chugging and that kind of thing. And she's like, yeah, I doubt that.
This made me laugh because like I remember those days of being a teenager, like when you first start drinking and you just like act like such an idiot even though you're not really that drunk.
Yeah, because you had a Mike's Hard, like half of a Mike's Hard lemonade.
Yeah. You drank 1 can of Lucky.
Yeah.
That's a very local joke, but
yeah. So Scudsworth and Mr. Butlertron show up, and he's wearing baggy red jeans, has a backwards cap on,
Much like
And he has
myself.
a baggy black t-shirt that says Fat Boys. And Mr. Butlertron comes in.
It says Fat Boys, but it's not spelled PHAT. It's spelled FAT,
F-A-T.
which
F-A-T.
made me laugh.
And Mr. Butlertron is exactly the same. He's just wearing a big, like, Flavor Flav clock necklace on him.
Yep.
And he's like, "How do you do, fellow students? Raise the roof. Raise it."
Is it?
So any Clone High fan, if you ever like say, "Raise the roof," raise it. That's immediately how you can find each other in the wild.
Right.
Like I've been like
that,
"Hey,
or
Clone
being
High."
like, chamomile.
Chamomile, or being like, "But why?" And doing like the hand
Yeah.
raise thing. I fucking love that. Or next time on a very special episode. Uh did you see the pool? They flipped the bitch. So many, it's easily quotable.
Yeah.
But needless to say, like literally everybody knows this is Scudworth and Butlertron.
There's
Like,
a bit where
Van
Gon-
Gogh.
uh,
Oh,
yeah, I was that's actually where I was going with that. So Gandhi is on the phone on the like kids help hotline with Van Gogh.
and there's noise in the background and everyone's being loud and drunk.
And so Gandhi has him on speakerphone, and Van Gogh is like pouring his heart out, like talking about his feelings
By
and
the
whatnot.
way, when in the cut to Van Gogh's bedroom, like his whatever, it's painted like a Van Gogh painting. I mean, not as good, but just loosely.
Yeah.
It's like very dreamy, like, and he's got like his
Also,
hoodie up
he has a bandage like around his head
around his head.
to
To-
presumably to cover his one ear.
Yeah. But it kind of appears like he's like a kid in a hoodie.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like because they're teens. But yeah, he's having a hard time and he's like he's rocking himself on the chair.
Yeah.
And he opens his heart to Gandhi, and
Gandhi has him on speakerphone to like the entire like crowd of people at this party.
and they all end up laughing at him, and he gets extremely embarrassed and upset and angry.
Understandably.
And they're like, "Ha ha, he wants to be accepted by his peers. How pathetic!" And everyone laughs at him.
Yeah.
And he vows revenge. And this is the part where Butlertron comes to the swing set.
Yeah, because Joan of Arc is feeling she's kind of upset because she's really into Abe Lincoln, but Abe Lincoln like just thinks of her as basically like a good buddy of his. He's essentially friend zoned her. And
is very like ignorant.
he's very oblivious to her affections. But
She'll even be like, "Abe, I want you." And he'll be like, "Want me to what?"
Yeah.
And she'll be like, so Butlertron comes up and he's like, "Joan of Arc, I can tell something is bothering you. Why don't you tell me?"
Wesley.
And actually gives her like advice.
Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, he gives her like some pretty like meaningful and profound advice.
In a nutshell, he's like basically
Go for it.
Yeah, maybe one of you just needs to make the first move. And she's all like, "Right. Like, yeah, what? Maybe I should." And it's like, it doesn't, and that person can be you, Wesley.
And so she's like, great. So she runs off to like go and make a move on Abe. And
I love you,
know
Butlertron.
wouldn't you know it, she stumbles across Abe and Cleopatra making out.
And then like
is this the
what
part
band?
where
There's like a band that like plays that was very like emo at the time. Not Sum 41, not Blink 182. Fuck. Welcome to my life.
I have no idea. The only band that's coming to mind is Good
Simple
Charlotte.
Plan.
Oh, a Simple Plan.
It feels like Simple Plan, but I don't know if it is. Anyway, she sees them making out.
She sees them making out. And is this the part where Abe Lincoln like spots them making out and is just like, you dirty slut?
JFK.
Or yeah, JFK, sorry. He's like, you dirty slut. And meanwhile, like he has a girl in a hot tub with him.
He's like, you cheating whore. And I don't know what painting this is like referencing, but um freaking Gandhi is like wearing a suit and he's standing at the end of the boat, like looking up in like the
Hmm.
rowboat. And I'm like, oh, what is that? Is that I think that's a painting, but I'm not sure. I'm sure if I could Google it, I could find out now. But yeah, he marches over and he's like, what do you think you're doing? And in typical teenage fashion, blames the man, not his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And Abe is like, hey, listen, JFK, I know this is going to be hard to accept, but we kissed. So basically, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together.
Uh,
And
there's a
he's
sub.
JFK is like, that means nothing. Come on, she's drunk. She also kissed a talking peanut. And it goes over to that like anthropomorphic Mr. Peanut. And he's like, haha, right here on me left nut. And I actually like fucking almost like spit out my drink at that part. Right here on me left nut. And I'm like, man, this is good. And the funniest jokes aren't even here yet because when the cop shows up,
The cop as voiced by Andy Dick.
mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot. Doesn't Cleo call? She's like, I need time alone.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
she
bring that
calls
up.
the
There's a subplot later in the episode where uh Joan of Arc figures out that Gandhi. She figures out what Gandhi has been doing. That he's at the party. That he's been
she
answering the
tases him.
hotline. Yeah, she tases him repeatedly as she's like giving advice to someone over the
And then
phone.
she takes the phone.
Yeah, she takes the
Does
phone.
what she was actually supposed to do. So it's like, oh, good.
Yeah. Um, Cleopatra calls the kids help hotline and is like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't. I'm torn between these two guys. One's a real asshole and one who's really hot, but one's a super nice guy who's really not." And Joan of Arc like sees Cleopatra in the window.
In the house that they're at the party of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sees her like through the window in the house. Sees like her silhouette, and she figures out that it's her that she's talking to. So she's like, "Ho go go with the asshole. You should go with the asshole. Definitely go with the
Better
the
for your
asshole."
luck.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, also, stop flossing.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And
Also, don't floss.
it zooms in into the window and it shows Cleopatra taking notes. And I'm like,
Uh and I think Butlertron shows up again, right? And
well,
like
what happens is she looks over and she sees Abe and she goes, ugh,
oh,
because
she
Abe is
sees
like
him
all
being really
sad.
sad. Yeah, right, right.
And she's like, go with the nice guy. Trust me, it'll be better. And also floss every day. It's a good way to avoid plaque in hard to reach areas, and then hangs up. And Gandhi comes out of nowhere and he's like, wow, did you just screw yourself?
Yeah, she says a line. It's like make sure to floss every day. It promotes good oral hygiene
Yeah.
and blah blah. It's something I feel like was in like a Listerine commercial or something back then. Because like the exact
Oh,
line that she said sounded very familiar. Like it brought up some like
sounded very PSA.
yeah, it unlocked some like ancient like commercial memory for me.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And and there's a lot of that in Clone High, listeners. Like there's a lot of like making fun of like marketing trend like humor in it.
Right.
But yeah, Gandhi comes out of nowhere. He's like, wow, did you just screw yourself over? And this is weird. Joan pulls his belt off in one swift move. And I was like, oh my. How is she able to do that?
Oh,
And he's
my.
like, huh, I bet you're expecting, by the way, people, this is when baggy jeans were still kind of in.
Yep.
So, and he's like, I bet you're expecting my pants to fall off, but I'm wearing boxers. and from behind her back, she just pulls out like heart boxers. And I'm like, wait, I have questions. And then his pants fall down,
Yeah.
but no one's around.
And
he
he
goes,
even says as he walks away, he's like, haha, good thing no one was around to see that.
but he doesn't pull up his pants and walk away. He just turns 180s and shuffles away with his pants down, which again, like
With his
I
like
love the
arms
humor.
at it, with his arms at his hips.
And I
Ugh.
laughed. I actually laughed hard at this. It zooms in and it plays kind of like dramatic, like tense music, like do doon 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 doon, like on a piano. And Van Gogh is in the bushes, and he's like, "Oh, nobody saw, indeed, Gandhi. Nobody saw, indeed." And I'm so fucking stupid because it just showed him across town, like presumably in his own room, like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
He ran like I don't know. I was losing it at this point because it just keeps getting funnier and funnier because
Also, I like how he knew exactly like where the person he was talking to on the kids help hotline was. And knew that it was Gandhi.
I and then Cleo comes out and chooses Abe, but
Yeah.
gives her hand, and it goes over to the Mr. Peanut. And he's like, haha, sorry, old chaps. It looks like you get salty seconds again. And I'm like, fuck.
Salty seconds.
And now it establishes it's going to be a long going thing where JFK and Joan, will they, won't they kind of thing. As a younger kid, I was like, man, I fucking hate that. Again, spoilers, that the very end of the episode, like I actually think they're frozen like seconds after they just fucked. Abe realizes that he loves Joan of Arc and can't fuck Cleopatra. All he thinks about is Joan. And he runs off to go find her, and her hair's messy and she's like naked under the covers, and she pops up and she's like, Abe. And JFK pops up and he's like, oh yeah. And then everything gets frozen. Like while he's seeing that, while she's embarrassed, while JFK is like in the bed, right then, that is when everything gets frozen. But now that I'm an adult, man, no, she doesn't have to wait for him. Also, kind of fuck him. Like at least JFK is like upfront.
Right.
Because he gives Joan a beer and he's like, are you drunk enough to sleep with me? And she karate kicks him. And
That made me
again,
laugh.
another sight gag. She karate kicks him, which we probably expected. But he leans up and he's like, answer the question.
Just the
Oh, fuck.
the absolute like hilariously sleazeball line of like, are you drunk enough to sleep with me?
Just such good
Answer the
writing.
question.
Answer the question. Not deterred by getting karate kicked.
Yeah.
So the star of the fucking episode shows up, the cop,
Right.
and he goes, well,
Also voiced by Andy Dick.
if it isn't my old friend, underage drinking. So we meet again. How are you? Underage drinking.
This cop just takes his job like way too seriously.
It's holding up a beer. So we meet again. Underage drinking. How are you? Underage drinking. And it's just the delivery. It like this is funnier than when I was a teenager. How are you underage drinking? Besides being illegal. And he like dramatically like pours it on the beer out. So he grabs Gandhi because Gandhi does like
that very like
backflip.
slow build. We mentioned Pineapple Express earlier. There's a gag early on in the movie where Bill Hader is there's like a prologue at the beginning of the film that's set in like the 50s or something, and it's like in black and white. And
Right.
Bill Hader is like in this interrogation room, and like he's like they're testing the effects of marijuana. And what one, this guy in this like really like like hilarious like sci-fi spacesuit like walks up to Bill Hader as he's all stoned, and Bill Hader's like, "Whoa, holy bejesus." Then the guy who's interrogating him is after Bill Hader it like starts laughing at him and I think like making fun of his like tie or something like that. He's like, "Well, we have determined that marijuana must be declared oh."
Illegal.
Uh,
And I love it because he gets Gandhi just because Gandhi passes out in his arms, the cop in Clone
yeah.
High. And Joan just like volunteers herself. She just like walks up to the cop car and he's like, "Ha, you're all busted." "Well, actually, I can only take two of you because the squad car only fits two. So I guess all the rest of you are get off clean."
I'm gonna let the rest of you off with a warning, see? A
And
warning.
then Cleo grabs Abe's arm and she's like, "Come on, Abe, leave your nerdy friends behind and come hang out with me in my soundproof basement." And I'm like, "Fuck."
My soundproof basement.
And
Jesus
then that
Christ.
fucking Simple Plan song starts up again. "If you, I can taste your licorice on my
Come and
lips."
hang
And
out with me in my parents' soundproof basement takes me back to being fucking 17 years old right there. Oh God.
Abe does the right thing.
I
I
I
love this. The cop is like, "Son, if we don't enforce these laws, then the excitement of sneaking around and getting wasted might disappear. You want that on your shoulders, pal?" I fucking lost it again. The excitement of sneaking around and getting wasted and breaking the law. It'll lose its charm. Do you want that on your conscience, pal? And I'm like, fuck, I was actually like laughing at this point.
I actually don't remember that part.
I I wrote it all down because I was like, this is fucking like the episode gets funnier and funnier. Do you want that on your conscience, pal? And then he's like, "It's non-alcoholic beer." And I guess what I was just looking for is what all of us want to. What have all of us yearn for? Acceptance. And there's this moment where everybody just looks at him slack-jawed. And then the cop is like, "It's the loser." And everybody points and laughs. And usually that's how this episode, the episodes of Clone High ends, is something embarrassing happens and it shows them walking to school the next day. Indeed. And Joan is like, "Abe, something embarrassing is going to happen to someone else like in a day or two, and no one's even going to remember." And then immediately there's a mural painted on the side of the school. And it's a Van Gogh. And it's a picture of Gandhi like at the party with his like arms and
Right.
legs spread out. And he's naked and he's holding up like a little tiny paintbrush, signifying that he's got like, you know, like a small wang, haha, small wiener jokes or whatever. And he's
Yeah.
like, told you I'd get back at you, Gandhi." And Gandhi's like, "Oh, great."
And that's the episode, right?
And that's the episode.
Sweet. Well,
I like the outros because the narrator is like, "Next week on Clone High, guest voice actor Marilyn uh,
Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson shows up. Also, Abe and JFK's rivalry continues, and perhaps Gandhi will provide some sort of comic relief." And
Also, Marilyn Manson in this shot has his ribs taped up. Did you notice that?
no,
Yeah, he has his ribs taped up. Going back to an old like urban legend
that
from
fucking
the
urban
90s.
legend.
Yeah.
How I'm glad
Uh,
that they ran with that.
for anyone who doesn't know, there was an urban legend. I don't even know how this got started, but there was an
And
urban
how it
legend.
ended up at every school. before the
every
internet.
fucking school before the internet. There was an urban legend that Marilyn Manson had like a couple of his ribs removed
The bottom ribs removed.
so he could perform fellatio on himself.
That's it.
It is absolutely not true, but for whatever reason, it was something every fucking teenager was talking about in the late 90s.
I don't get how.
But
Even American friends I have said they heard that.
yeah.
I-
But yeah, so Marilyn Manson in the one shot that he's in at the end of this episode has his ribs taped up, which kind of made me chuckle because I'm like, huh, I see what they're referencing.
I didn't
there.
catch that.
Well, that was the inaugural episode of Clone High. Now, do you have a question for me, good sir?
I have several,
Okay.
but only one matters. And that is Siege. You just caught a random episode of Clone High. Based on this episode, would you tune in next week?
Well, this isn't available to watch legally anywhere in Canada.
You just can't answer the question like a normal person. You son of a no.
So I was
not.
forced. No, it's not. It's not available on any streaming service. It's not available for purchase anywhere. It kind of surprised me, especially since the show is coming back. But I'm
Not
sure
on,
it'll
like,
end up on Crave.
Amazon or
I'm sure it'll end up on Crave soon. But
something like that, right?
But so I had to pirate the episode, and along with this episode, I pirated the entire series. So I have it readily available to watch, and you know what? I think I will. I would tune in next week.
Goddamn right. And you know what? I may or may not have done the same thing. And I may or may not also watch the rest of it's on mtv.com.
Oh,
Hold my beer. Hold my non-alcoholic beer. Sorry, this video is not available from your location.
I was gonna say it's probably geo-locked.
Okay. Why, man? So VPN, you can watch it on mtv.com if you VPN your country.
But I've already got that torrent, so
Too late to turn back now. Yeehaw. We tried to.
we came too far.
Came too far.
We've come too far, damn it.
All right. So that's a unanimous. We would tune in next week.
Yep.
We would sail the 7 seas next week.
Indeed. And that was episode 64 of the Lasercomb Podcast. Best way to support the show, go to patreon.com/lasercomb, LAZORCOMB. We're at the single $5 tier, known affectionately as the Gary tier. You get access to commentary tracks. You get a Patreon exclusive show, the Super Lasercomb Patreon Super Show, and you get the ability to pick a show for us to review a random episode of, which we're going to be jumping back to Patreon picks real soon here, but I'll have more on that in a moment. So if you want to get in on all of that, go to patreon.com/lasercomb. You can follow me on Twitter at Lasercomb, spelled the same way, LAZORCOMB, or you can follow Cal at...
You can follow me at NeoCal on Twitter, NEO_KAL. I'm also on other things like the TikToks.
Yeah. At the same.
That's the same, yeah.
At the same. We're going to take a little bit of a break from this show for probably, I don't know, maybe a month or two to focus on other things, doing the aforementioned commentary tracks for Patreon. We have another podcast called The Commercial Zone. It's kind of a when we get to it type show. We've only got one episode out so far. It was about the 1980s McDonald's commercial and marketing campaign, Mac Tonight.
What a trip that was.
What a trip that was. We're going to be doing another episode of that show real soon here. Hence why the Lasercomb Podcast is going on a bit of a hiatus. But as I said, it's only going to be like maybe a month or two. So at the time of recording, it is 4:20. Blaze it.
Is that what the kids do? What does that mean? Hang loose?
Hang loose.
Does anybody do that?
Anymore? No,
Like,
they don't.
They did that for like 2 years, I feel like.
We're yeah. So we're the show's going on hiatus. We'll be back sometime, probably in early summer, maybe June ish. Because time of recording, as I said, it's 420. So June. Yeah, that's when we'll
June.
June. That's when we'll be back, and we'll probably end up talking about the Clerks cartoon. But
Yeah. Do we
we'll
want to
figure that out when we get there.
roll which episode?
No, we'll do it off air this time. Just because in case we decide between now and then we want to talk about
Yeah.
something else instead.
Yeah.
Be very non-committal. Anyway, yeah, that's what we're going to be working on. The Commercial Zone, Patreon stuff, and yada yada yada. And until we come back to episode 65 of the Lasercomb podcast at some point in the future, I've been one of your hosts, Christopher Siege.
And I'm your very special host of the second most NeoCal.
Thanks for listening. We will clone you next time.
That wraps up another day for Teletoon. Good night and see you tomorrow.
Thanks for coming, folks.
Thank you.